Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 22nd of June of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. First, before we start discussing the situation on the ground, we got very interesting two updates from Kiev and from Ivano-Frankivsk region. And basically, according to information we have and according to the documents that were published, on the 19th of June, for example, in the settlement or in the region by the name of Ivano-Frankivsk, the Ukrainians announced total mobilization, and the same order, the same document today was published in Kiev. And basically on the 19th of June, the Kiev office, the Kiev government office announced the total mobilization in the settlement as well. Of course, we understand that during the previous attempts from the Ukrainian side to penetrate the Russian defense belt were failed, and basically the Ukrainians had a lot of losses. For example, these days the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation reported that during just the clashes from the 14th of June till 20th of June, the Ukrainians lost 14,000 soldiers, and probably the losses are higher, but anyway, the Ukrainians are forced to announce another wave because they understand that probably the forces they have and the results that they can achieve as a result of counter-offensive operation can be very, very poor with significant losses from their side. So now let's move to the ground and let's discuss the situation. And first we're going to start with Energodar, with the settlement. Basically, the Russian sources published the photo of these territories. You can see this is the water reservoir, and as you can see there are like two colors. One is light blue color and the second one is black blue color. So basically black blue color means the territory where there are no more water, and light blue color is the territory with water. As you can see, like more than 50% of this territory is free of water, and furthermore, as you can see, there is like a small area you need to mention, you need to take a look at. That is on the west from Energodar. There is a small, and between Nikopol and the Russian bank of this territory there is a road. So there was like X road during the Soviet period of time before the Russians finished creation of the dam. There was a road, and basically as soon as the water left this territory, the road appeared, and currently the Ukrainians do have possibility to use this road to move their armored vehicles and tanks because the road saved its quality, and basically the Ukrainians can use this road to attack the Russians in Kupiansk, Dniprovsk area settlement, and Energodar as well. So basically the road lays somewhere in this area. And currently this road is on the surface, and the Ukrainians can use this to attack the Russians. From the other side, the Russians published the video how they were attacking and bombing the Ukrainians on the opposite side. On this bank, this explosion is geolocated. As you can see on this video, there is almost no water, and from time this water will go from this territory, and the situation is going, the area is going to be more dry. And anyway, sooner or later, either the Russians and the Ukrainians will be able to use this territory, this road, to attack each other on the ground. This is a very bad situation because if you remember in the previous videos many months ago, we discussed that the only possible solution for the Ukrainians to ever to stop the Russians ever is to establish the bridgehead along the Dnipro River. But basically the current situation tell us that there is no barriers anymore for the Russians, and basically they can attack also from Energodar and from Kherson area to the north and to encircle Zaporozhye and Dnipro easily. Now we are moving to move further to the let's say Piatykhatky bridgehead, to this territory. The Russians and the Ukrainians continue clashes and fightings for this settlement. Currently nobody controls the settlement. This area is in the gray zone. The Ukrainians are trying to keep their forces on the northern part of the settlement in these farms, on the north of the settlement. The Russians controls the hills in the south and Zherebyanka as well. The Ukrainians continue accumulation process of their forces, and basically today the Russian sources published the video of another convoy of few light vehicles that were heading in direction of Piatykhatky. So the Ukrainians continue accumulation, and the Russians expect that within the next few hours the Ukrainians will restart their offensive operation with purpose to completely capture the settlement and to push the Russians from the hill that located in the vicinity of that settlement. So let's move further. As you can see, some forces have arrived. left the cars moved back to the mainland, probably to take more forces, and this small platoon or squad of forces is heading somewhere in direction of trenches or fortifications to prepare and to get ready before the next offensive operation on these territories. So as you can see, this video is like the farms. So basically the cars arrived somewhere here in this area, so that was the area where the cars have arrived. Then the Ukrainians somewhere in this interception left their positions, left their cars, and then they moved to the south in direction of these farms and basically take their positions and they're waiting for an order to continue offensive operation to the south. The Russians during the previous 24 hours made another attack and bombed Ukrainian positions in Lapkova. The Russians bombed Ukrainian positions in Sherbaki, and the Russians bombed Ukrainians' positions in the small settlement by the name of Preobrazhenka. All these settlements are located on the Orekhov front line. Also, the Russians reported that they bombed Ukrainian positions in Novodanilovka, and from the Ukrainian side, we got an update that Ukrainians launched another attempt of counter-offensive operation on the left side of the road between Novodanilovka and Robotina. Currently, like at 8 p.m. of the local time, the Ukrainians are doing the storming operations. For now, we still haven't received any updates about the results of that attack. I believe that Ukrainians will be defeated, but anyway, currently there are still heavy clashes in this area. The Russians published very interesting geolocated video somewhere in the vicinity in the triangle between Malotokmachka, Verbovka and Novopokrovka. As you can see, there was a convoy that were heading along these forest lines somewhere to the south in direction of Russian position, but something went wrong, and at some time the Russians started bombing and shelling, and as a result of that attack, at least 3 or 4 even armored vehicles that were ahead of that convoy were destroyed as a result of attacks. As you can see, there are very heavy explosions. Most of the armored vehicles that were behind the head of the convoy stopped, and as I understand, they took a decision to turn around and to step back from this bridgehead. As you can see, no matter how many times the Ukrainians send their forces to the south, the Russians are able to defeat them, and furthermore, from one attempt to another attempt, the Russians are able to restore and to refresh minefields on these territories using the distance method of mining. And now we're moving to the Vremivka tactical bridgehead. The Ukrainians made few attempts to attack the Russians in the vicinity of Makarovka, and they were attacked in the vicinity of Novodonetsk. Both those attacks were repelled by the Russians. From the other side, from the Russian side, the Russians took a decision to bomb and attack the Ukrainian positions of 128th Territory Defense Brigade and 110th Territory Defense Brigade in the settlements, in the vicinity of settlements like Novodarivka, like Novoselovka. Furthermore, the Russians attacked Ukrainians' positions in the vicinity of Neskutchne. They were attacking the forces of 31st Mechanized Brigade, and the Russians repelled 2 attacks in the vicinity of Makarovka, Novodonetsk of 37th Mechanized Brigade. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of fierce fightings on the front line from Piatykhatky to Vremivka tactical bridgehead, the Ukrainians lost 110 soldiers, 16 armored vehicles, including 2 tanks and 1 artillery system D-20. Now we're moving further to Donetsk, to this area. The Russians reported that the Ukrainians were forced to reduce the level of activities on this bridgehead. The total losses of the Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours were around 185 soldiers. As you can see, in comparison with the previous days, the level of losses has been reduced significantly. For example, yesterday, according to the Ministry of Defense, the Ukrainians lost 400 soldiers. The day before yesterday, 220 soldiers, and 3 days ago 340 soldiers, and currently today just 185. So basically this is the lowest level of the losses. So that's mean that probably the Ukrainians took a decision to make some regrouping and to get more fresh forces on the combat line, and the Russians expect another activation of the Ukrainians during the next hours. During the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians were attacking the Russians in the vicinity of Pervomayska. That attack was repelled by the Russians. The Ukrainians were trying to attack and to return positions in the vicinity of Vysole. They are still trying to cut the salient and to return control over Krasnogorovka and to restore normal access to Avdiivka from the mainland. The Russians reported that as an answer they bomb and shelled Ukrainians' ammo depots in Avdiivka. Furthermore, the Russians published the video how they were bombing and shelling the Ukrainian positions exactly in this area. This video is geolocated. So basically, as you can see, during the previous days of counter-offensive operation, the Ukrainians were able to repel Russian attack, and they managed to make some kind of successful counter-offensive, and as a result of that counter-offensive, the Ukrainians captured this forest line and they forced the Russians to step back on the line between Vodyane and Oputne, and currently these trenches are located on the hill, and these hills are under Ukrainian control. Now we're moving further to Artyomov's front line. We haven't received any updates from this territory, just the local clashes, artillery duels. We haven't received any geolocated videos about the situation on the ground. So basically we can say that the front line has been stabilized by both sides, and we don't see any further or possible further attempts from both sides to continue advancing on this bridgehead. Neither the Ukrainians are going to attack the flanks, nor the Russians are going to move in direction of Chasov Yar. Now we are getting and we're moving to the most hottest front line during the previous days, and we're going to talk about Siversk Liman bridgeheads. The Russians reported that as a result of artillery bombing, they destroyed the headquarters of 10th Mountain Assault Brigade in the vicinity of Vysole, this small settlement Vysole. Furthermore, the Russians attacked and destroyed the Ukrainians' ammo depot in the vicinity of Siversk, and the Russians geolocated another drone attack, and as a result of that attack, Lancet attack, the Ukrainians lost another MLS system, another missile launcher. As you can see, this video shows the result. This is the Ukrainians were trying to evacuate and run away from this vehicle. Nothing happened with them. They managed to save their lives, as you can see, but they've lost another artillery system on this bridgehead. Now we're moving to the Kreminna forest. The Russians reported that they managed to repel at least 5 attacks from the Ukrainian side just in Kreminna forest, and the Russians reported they added also that they managed to capture around 20 Ukrainian soldiers. And furthermore, for example, the Russian blogger reported that as a result of fierce fightings on this bridgehead, the Russians managed to significantly increase the bridgehead in Kreminna forest. Furthermore, the Russians launched another offensive operation not just on Kreminna forest. The Russians are trying to attack Bilogorovka, or at least at this stage of offensive operation, to capture this industrial zone that they were shelling and bombing during the previous week fiercely. Furthermore, the Russians destroyed the ammo depot or attack positions of 67th of the 2nd Mechanized Battalion of 67th Brigade in the vicinity of Serebryanka. And currently the Russians are trying to advance from this salient to the south, and they're trying to get exactly the Siversk Donetsk river in this direction and to cut the forces in Serebryanka forest from the mainland, to be more precise, from the settlements like Zarechno, Tarskoye and Liman. Furthermore, the Russians bombed the Ukrainian positions, the positions of 21st Mechanized Brigade in the vicinity of Terny, and that report was provided us from the Ministry of Defense, by the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation. And the most important part of that update is that the Russians reported that they were bombing and shelling the positions of 21st Mechanized Brigade. And if we take a look at the map of strategical reserves, 21st Mechanized Brigade, at least by today, was located in the vicinity of Nikolaev. So basically we can move another brigade from strategical reserves to the Kupiansk, to the Liman front line in this area. And currently we see that possibly and maybe the Ukrainian forces have accumulated the most powerful fist, not in Orekhov bridgehead, not in Vremivka tactical bridgehead, but exactly on the Liman front line. But I still don't have the answer to the question whether the Russians are going to attack or the Ukrainians, whether the Russians are going to defend themselves or the Ukrainians. For now, it's very difficult to understand because both sides have accumulated a lot of forces. As you can see on the Russian side, there are also 4th Motorized Brigades, 652nd Motorized Regiment, 35th Motorized Regiment, 252nd, 144th Division, Bars Infantry Battalion, 208th Motorized Regiment. Furthermore, there is a 4th Tank Division and 1st Guards Tank Army. A lot of powerful forces from the Russian side are located in this territory, so basically we still don't know who exactly is going to attack, who exactly is going to defend themselves. But when talking about the progress and when talking about the updates that we are receiving from the front lines, we see that the Russians is the side who is attacking currently. Now we're moving further to the north and we're going to talk about the Kupiansk front line. The Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours the Ukrainians lost 30 soldiers, 3 armored vehicles and 1 artillery system. As you can see, the level of losses is not so high, but we received a lot of updates, at least not from the Ministry of Defense, from the local bloggers, from military experts, from soldiers and officers who are on the ground, and they are saying that the Russians managed to establish final control over this forest, and basically the Russians managed to establish fire control over the roads that goes to Kakhovka, and basically the settlement is appeared in small operational encirclement. We expect some movements from the Russians along this road in this direction to the south, and the purpose is of course to establish another fire control over this road, and this will allow the Russians to encircle Kakhovka, and if Kakhovka falls, then the Russians are not going to have any barriers in front of them to start the battle of Kupiansk. But from the other side, we understand that even if the Russians are going to attack Kupiansk from the north, like in direction of first Petropavlovka, without Petropavlovka there is no reason to attack Kupiansk, and only Petropavlovka the Russians can start movements to the west and from the north to the south. But anyway, without taking control over the western part of Kupiansk, it will be very difficult to get close to the river, because the western part of Kupiansk is located on the hill and the southern one is on the lowland. So basically the situation here reminds me the situation in the vicinity of Ugledar, when one settlement that located in the hill controls the entire territory around that settlement. So basically we can see the same situation on this front line, and if the Russians want to achieve significant success, of course they need to continue advancing, let's say, on the north in direction of Dvorichne. First they need to capture this settlement to establish a very stable and powerful bridgehead exactly on this territory, and after that having a normal supply road, because without supply the Russians can't advance. Having normal supply road through Oskol river in Dvorichne, only after that the Russians will be able to start advancing to the south. And for now it's a very difficult and complicated operation, very difficult to understand what the Russians are going to do. And I'll remind you from my side that Ukrainians have redeployed the newly created 88th Mechanized Brigade that was trained by the Western countries. This brigade has a lot of modern Western weapons, so it's not going to be a very easy trip for the Russians, but we'll see what it's going to be. And I forgot to mention the loss of the Ukrainians on Liman. The Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours the Ukrainians lost 135 soldiers, and today and yesterday are 2 days with the heaviest losses of the Ukrainians on this front line for the previous, I believe, 2 months since the second part of April or something like this. One more time, another interesting thing, that Ukrainians started bombing and shelling the Russians' bridges that connects Crimea with South Zaporozhye area, and there are a lot of places that Ukrainians could use for those attacks, and I believe that they will continue doing them. There are not many bridges, there are also supply on the ground, but anyway, if you have possibilities to reduce Russian logistics, they will do this. Furthermore, the Russians reported that those attacks were made not by the vehicles, those attacks were made by the aircrafts, and we expect another wave of missile and drone attacks against the Ukrainians' airfields during the next 48 hours, because if the Ukrainians do have possibility to use airplanes to attack Crimea bridges, then they will continue doing this until at least the Russians are able to destroy them. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, share my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.